Hello guys, welcome along, welcome to the channel. Nigel here from Nigel's Modelling Bench, and this is part 3 of the Land Rover 100 or 110, sorry, Wolf build up, and we're shortening it to a 90, which is actually a 93-inch wheelbase. So you can see here, remember in part 2 we cut the rear end off here and I showed you how to do that. Also showed you how it worked out with these boxes, put a piece of plastic card in there, and then we've cut it down, and hey presto, we've got a short wheelbase side panel there. And basically what we were after was a overall length, if you remember, from the door shut to the back end of 39.35, and there we go, we've got 39.33. so I'm happy with that, and they're both done. This one is actually going to get cut out in this area where the fuel cap goes. I've got the fuel cap there. I'm going to actually cut that piece in once this has all gone hard and everything and sorted. So what I could have done was not worried about putting that piece of plastic card in and actually, you know, put this in the same time. I thought, get it straight, get it all square and parallel, and then we'll cut it out after and make that fit in there. So that's a little job for later. Now, the next job I said we're going to do is shorten the rear of the chassis. As you can see, this is the chassis, the shortened chassis. This is the 110 chassis, and you can see the rear section from there back is identical, and the front section from there forward is identical. But what we need to do now is actually shorten this rear part of the chassis, because obviously you've got less overhang. When we line up the wheel arch with the centre of there's the centre of the rear wheels there, we can see the chassis sticking out, and we actually need to remove 9.35 millimeters from this chassis to get it to match the body, which I was going to do. But also remember, if you remember, we said we're going to scribe some parallel lines, so make sure we cut it so that we don't end up having a big mismatch in the parts. But what I decided to do is cut down the rear of the floor first, and then we can use this floor as a jig, because what we don't want to do is end up having the chassis like this. We want to make sure it's nice and straight. So if we keep the floor like this, then we won't know where to end up with these. But if we shorten the floor here and move these holes closer together by 9.35 millimeters, then that will be our jig to make sure our chassis works out okay. So what I need to do now is take 9.35 out of this floor. Now unfortunately, as it works out, these ribs, as you can see, they're 11.2 to the outside, and they're 8.8 to the inside, so we need to cut sort of through the middle of them. What I'm going to do is cut either side. So the first cut I'm going to make is here, because I want to retain these tie downs here in the back end. So what I'm going to do is cut from the back of this rib here. I'm going to cut up, across, and then down. Okay, now it's very difficult to mark out with masking tape. It's very difficult to mark at all, really. So what I'm going to do is try and get my blocks. So I need the blocks because we've got these pins on the back, so I can put those down in the holes, and I can hold that like that. And then if I get the right size packing, I can scribe or mark a line to cut to. Now that's too low, so I need to come up a bit more. So I'll get another sanding stick, like so. And we'll see how that works out. Yeah, that's fine, I can use that as a line. So there we go. And that has actually brought us out just to the front of that rib, so that's fine. So I'll put this back down. Make the floor straight, and there we go. So we've got a line to work to now, roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect, because of course we've got our sanding sticks. So the other thing I need to do is establish what we're going to do. So I've measured here 53.19 across the outside of these posts, minus 9.35. So what we're aiming for is a dimension across those of 43.84. So let me get this cut now. So I'm going to start by, I'm going to run down the edge of here with the blade and just gently kind of scribe it more than anything. just to establish a line. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I worked to the inside, yeah, I did work to the inside of that rib. As I've said a few times in part 2, you know, I'm hoping someone will have a go at this, because it is it's an interesting little project, and it's a lot of fun, and which is what modelling should be about. It's fun, and as I was saying before, you know, it's not all about resin conversions and stuff and buying stuff and gluing it on. Sometimes you can make your own little creations with the use of a saw and a knife and a bit of forethought and some measuring. So there we go, that's that cut through there. And then I can do the same here. And there we go. And as I say, if it's not perfectly straight, it doesn't matter, we can get the sanders on it and sand it square. There we go, we're through there now. And we're through there. So now we can go across the top, like so. Looks like I did go off a square a bit there. As I say, it doesn't matter, sanding stick's your friend here. Just to show you can get rough with it and really start to give it some there we go. So that's that cut off. Now we can use our calipers to make sure we're parallel. So that's 12.45, that's 12.74, and a thicker in the middle there. So again, we use our sanding sticks. So I'll get this squared up now with the sanding sticks, and then I'll come back. And so that's all cut off now and sanded flat, and I've basically sanded this to 12mm, as you can see there. So we now need to make this shorter. Luckily I've got another kit, because what I should have done was measured that length there as well, which actually is 53.6 on the standard 110-inch kit. So 53.6 minus 9.35 equals 44.25 across there. So I've got, on this side, I've got 40.5, and we want 44.25. So I need to remove sorry, I'm after 44.25 overall. So it's 44.25 minus 12, which is 12 for that, is 32.25, and I've got 40.6. So I need to remove, what did we say, 32.25. So I need to remove 40.6 minus 32.25 equals 8.35. So if I take off 8mm, then I'll have the 0.35 to play with. So let's set this at 8mm. There we go, 8mm, and lo and behold, that comes up to that edge of that rib. So what we can do now is cut up to that rib, and maybe, just maybe, we'll end up with those ribs butting up together, and it'll give us a nicer glue joint. So we shall see. So I'll get that cut out now, and then I'll come back. Okay then, there we go. So that's all sanded now, nice and flat and square. And we wanted 32.25, I've got 32.22 there, and 32.17, that's going to be absolutely fine. So we can just glue this together now, and the check we can do is these two pins, they were like that because the wings were further apart. I guess what I should do is get the long wheelbase parts out to do a comparison. And then if we've got it right, those two holes should line up in there, and the wing would go on those two holes, and sure enough it does. There we go. So there's those two holes filled with those pins. Back is nice and flush, and we've got a short wheelbase rear section, so we can now get this clamped down onto a flat surface. There are some raised ribs here that have to be removed, and it's also worth noting that the actual, there's the raised, in fact what I'll do is I'll get the other panel out. Here it is here. They tell you in the instructions to remove these raised sections here. So as you can see, I've sanded them off, but it's also, when you do it, you'll have to put some black magic marker or something around them, because the actual center of them is higher than the outer level. So put some black magic marker around them over the surface like so, and then come in with your flat sanding pad. Again, I'm using these Premium Hobbies 3D printed ones, and then just come in and sand it flat until all of the black magic marker disappears like so, and then you know it's nice and flat. And there's also some there's some draw marks down on there as well on the inner face. Give that a quick sand as well, because that got some sink marks in it. Okay, so now what we need to do is put this down on a flat base like so, and then we could get this together and glue it up, and that will be that job done. And there we go, guys. There's the floor all glued together and clamped down on this block, just to let it set, just to make sure everything stays nice and flat and square. And we've got the dimensions we're looking for. We were after 44.25, and if I put the vernier in there, or the caliper should I say, get that peg out of the way, we've got 44.24, and then on this side we've got 44.25. so happy there whether that's gone. I also put a piece of plastic card in there to block off the hole where the fuel filler went. So that's done. Now we can wait for that to set, and we can go on and look at modifying this, not that chassis, this chassis, to get it shorter. Remember, these two holes here, they're going to remain, so they sit in the floor like so. And we can see how much we've got to take off the back now. Those pins have to go into those holes. With regard to shortening this chassis, as I mentioned before, I was going to draw some parallel lines on here, because basically that's what's going to happen. We're going to move this rear part of the chassis forward by 9.35 millimeters. So just as an example, if I were to cut the chassis, here's my 9.35, if I were to cut it here, say, if I were to cut my 9.35 millimeters out there and then move it parallel, you can see that where this top of this cut meets here would be there, and this would be here. So I would end up with a big step. I would end up kind of with the front part of the chassis cut off like this, and then the rear part of the chassis would be like this. So obviously that wouldn't be suitable. So what I want to do is try and get them as much together as I can. So if we look here, I've got this set in 9.33, which is near enough. So as we can see there, those two lines, they're parallel, and they kind of meet at the same height. So if I come vertically down, we can see there, that cut there is going to be here. So what I'd need to do is thin the chassis out and sand it to blend, which is absolutely fine. And when we look at a short wheelbase chassis, you can see that where this has this flowing sort of line and curves up, a short wheelbase comes down and then suddenly flicks up. So it will be quite accurate, and it will keep the shape about right. I could come back a little bit and cut it there and there, but then what will happen is, as you can see, that will be here, and that would be about level there. So I would end up having to sand the top down. In fact, that might be a better plan to get that sort of hook into the top of the chassis. It might be better to come that way, say 3 millimeters. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark, so we'll go So we'll go 3.75. So we'll go 3.75 in from the end. So what I'm going to do first of all is sand all this off. Because I put all those lines on there, it's just going to confuse things. So that's that removed. So we can come along now and mark a line on there, 3.75. And we'll do the same on this side. Okay, it's not dead straight or anything because it doesn't need to be at this stage. So 9.35 plus 3.75 is 13.1. So it's 13.1. Just going to check that. 9.35 plus 3.75, 13.1, yeah. It's better to check than cut it and then find out you've gone too far. That didn't mark for some reason. There we go, that did that time. So there we go. So we've got a line there, a line there, a line there, and a line there. So if we cut within those lines, we can then sand the chassis and get this back end to fit in, because what we're basically trying to do is these center pins here are going to remain. They fit in the floor like so. Like that, and we're going to get these back pins to go into those holes again. Okay, so we can see there that what we're going to do, we actually need to take more off than I've actually marked on there, but what we'll do is we'll get it cut off, and then we can look at how much we're going to take off and what we're going to get in position. And as I say, we're going to use this floor as a jig. Okay, right, so I'm going to cut here to this line. As I say, it doesn't matter if it's not square, like that, because it's going to be going into that floor as the jig, and then we'll just sand it all and make it all fit. Okay, so that's that one cut off, and then do the same on this one. Okay, we don't even need to mark the sides, it doesn't really matter if they get mixed up. So we can see there I've got the back done, and we can see that I've got an angle on these somehow. So I'm going to just get my coarse sanding stick and just take that angle out. You can see I've got an angle on that one, so I'm just going to take that angle away like so. There we go, job done. Right, now we need to cut this out here. So what we're looking at doing is taking 9.35, so we'll set the vernier to 9, or 9.2, and we can see that we're right on that line. So again, I'm just going to come down here and cut this off. Like so. And on this side, again the same, we're on that line. So I'm just going to cut this off. There we go. So now when we put this on the chassis, we line up those two pins there, and it sits on these blocks, so it's clamped on there properly, and then we should be able to put these on and glue them in place like so. Now we've got some sanding to make them fit, and then we're going to blend the top down to get that correct shape into the top. And then the same on this side, put that in there, glue it into place, job done. So I'll do some more sanding, get these to fit nicely, and then I'll come back to you once they're glued on. And here we are, cut off, sanded, all nice and square, and all ready to go together. I've also taken some meat off the top of the chassis rails here in readiness for the blending in. We're obviously going to have to redo those weld seams as well, but that's not an issue. So we're going to fit the chassis to the floor. Check up here that it's square. We've got some lines on the floor there, so we can check its center around there. I'm going to grab a couple of pegs and just clamp the chassis to the floor like so. So that's under nice and firm. Check it's central up this end. And I think what I'll do is I'll put another couple of pegs in here just to make sure it's held down square, dead flat to the floor. And then we can just put these little pieces on the back and juggle them around to get the best fit. Like so. There we go. And then we can just, I'll use some of the quick setting initially and just put a little dab in there and a little dab in there. And then let that start giving us a bit of a weld in there. And I'm going to grab a pair of tweezers, oops, a pair of tweezers, just to give it a squeeze and make sure it's all nice and square and level and everything. Obviously once we've done this we'll sand it and blend it and fill it or whatever. And there we go, guys. Bit of ordinary extra thin now to get some proper wild action going on in there. The quick setting is great for setting stuff up just to position it, but it's not good, I find, as a final solution because it dries so fast. It sort of dries before it gets a chance to get into the joint and do any work, really. It's particularly good for small parts, that's what I find. The trouble is if you want to put something in that hole, you put the glue in the hole, you pick up the part, by the time you get to it, it's dry. So that is an issue. Well, another thing I forgot to mention, when we cut this floor, you can see there, you can see how that worked out with that cut through that cross member. So we've kept the cross member in place. So worth remembering that. So what I did, I cut that, so that's 12mm. From there to there was 12mm. And then I removed the rest from this side and ended up with that joint like that and kept the pins as well that the rear body locates on. Or the rear tub, should I say. So there we go, they're glued on now. Leave that to set and then we'll look at sanding it, blending it all in and then getting those weld seams re-established. And here we are a few hours later and that's the weld seams done or redone. And I'll let those go off now and then I'll put some Mr. Surfacer on them, let that dry and then put some more glue over them and then sand them, and as I did with these. If you are building this model you may not want to bother with this. It's not really going to be seen on the finished model unless you pick it up, but it's just something I like to do because I know it's there, and also it's better than leaving that seam in there and having to sand it all flat and everything. So yeah, the other thing of course you could do is get some 10-thou plastic card, cut it slightly too big around the frame, sandwich it in between when you actually put the frame together, and then you'll have this flange sticking out and you can sand that down and work with that instead. But whatever. So now it comes to shortening this part of the floor, and I think that will then be pretty much it for the short wheelbase conversion. As you can see, the actual floor is too long. Okay, so that this is the wrong side. That needs to be. That's how much we've got to take off to bring it all into line, and it should be 12.35. I've cut this to about 12.35 just to show you something. So this post-it note is going to represent the section we're going to cut out. I don't want to cut back here, and I don't want to cut up there. What I'm going to do is take a section out of here. Now I think I might have mentioned this before. So I'm going to get rid of those two ribs there, but leave this. Okay, so leave those two there, so they will be gone. All right, and then the cut will be like here and here, and we'll join it together there, and then we should get a continuation of these body supports then. And if it doesn't look quite right, we can always add another one in with some plastic strip or something. So what I need to do is mark out where we're going to actually make our cuts. So basically my first cut is going to be down here. Okay, so I'm going to cut along the edge of that rib there. Okay, and then run square down here and across, square down there and across, and then from there I'll measure 12.35. And then there'll be a next cut will be around about here, and that way I keep everything all intact. I keep these angles right for the bulkhead and everything, and it's simple then just to clamp this down to the block like I did back here, make sure it's all flat and square, and leave it to dry. And once we've done that bit, I think that'll be it for part 3, and hopefully we'll get that up for you then today. Those two lugs there are going to be gone once we get, because they're going to foul on here on the chassis. But I'm going to start by making this cut here. Now I'm going to start with my saw and just basically gently run along this edge. Okay, and I'm always using it like a scriber now, and I'm just going to cut through the floor. In fact, I need to look inside. Yeah, we're okay. So I just want to basically do this, and then what it will do, it will come through and we can see there it's come through just behind those two ribs that we're going to get rid of. So I'll go from the other side. And all I want to do here is establish a straight line. So with that blade in there, in that groove, I can now cut through and just take out that member there. What I don't want to do is go down the sides, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to purposely cut that way, because then I can sand it. Now I can see now that that saw has actually moved over while I was sanding, so while I was cutting, so I have to sand that square afterwards. So what I'm going to do now is purposely cut this on an angle, because this piece here will be scrap. So if I cut into it, then I can sand it square after. If I try and cut it square and go off, then I've messed up. So we can cut through like that there. You can see we're on an angle. Then I'll do the same on this side. Again on the angle. So we're through. And now what I'm going to do is cut down here, knowing that I'm too far forward. And then we should be able to just snap that away. Okay, so now we need to get this square. So what we're going to do, we're not going to cut this, we get one side square before we start cutting, and then we know exactly how long this needs to be. So I'm just going to sand this away here. There we go, we've got that now roughly in shape. So what I'll do now is I will get one of my 1, 2, 3 blocks. Somebody asked where I get these from. I've had these for absolutely years. I used to work at Rolls-Royce, and when I was facing redundancy and they were closing factories and stuff, they basically just threw a lot of stuff away, and they allowed some of the employees to take it home. And as I've always been a bit of an engineer at home and the workshop and stuff, I was very fortunate. They let me have quite a lot of stuff, really. So again, I'm going to use my Premium Hobby sanding blocks. Apparently these are out of stock at the moment. So as I watch this, today is Saturday the 16th of November. So as we speak today, apparently Ed is out of stock. So obviously they're very popular. I shall have to email him and tell him he's failed. He's failed to support the Nigel's Modelling Bench crew. Okay, so I want to check that square so I can get my another 1, 2, 3 block, hold it up against that one, and hold that like that, and I can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but I can see there's a gap. So it's not square yet, so I need to sand get it so that the actual floor section is touching, because at the moment that is actually on an angle. Do that there, and then once we get it flat we can concentrate on getting it all straight. Okay, so I'm pretty happy that that's square in there now, and I can now measure it. So that's 24.71, 24.54. So we need to take more off of this side. 24.6, 24.52, 24.47. So there we go, that is as near as damn it square. And we're all nice and square on there now. I find another use for these things, because that's square there, you can hold that in there like that, hold this down flat, and you've got a nice rigid square face to stand on. These things are absolutely brilliant. They're £9.95 for the set of 7. I think you've probably seen them before. They come marked out with all the different grit sizes. They're from Premium Hobbies, and based in Weston-super-Mare. And he makes them on a 3D printer, and these are literally £10. And when you order, if you put in the code NMB10, Nigel's Modelling Bench 10, you'll get 10% off. So, and that's across the whole site. Even sale items, you get a further 10% off if you use the code from my channel. And Ed, I think, is quite pleased with the success that he's having in sales from the advertising on this channel. So I've left a bit of a step in there, so I think I'm going to have to sand that out. I've got a bit of a saw mark. Remember I came around that way with the saw? So I think I'm going to have to do some more sanding. I'll come back when I'm done. Okay, so that's all cut now, sanded square on this half, and this half now needs to be shortened and brought into line with that one. The other thing we have to consider with this, we're going to work to our 12.35, but at the end of the day, what we must get is a good fit between the sill line there and the bottom of the body, and also it must fit with the bulkhead, and then the bulkhead must fit. The bulkhead must fit into these holes in the chassis here. So all in all, it all has to go together, fit over these pegs. The bulkhead has to fit and everything, and it all has to go together nicely. So if I've got everything right, that's how it should work out. We'll see. But basically, I mean, if I need to shorten the body a bit, I can. If I need to lengthen anything, I can. But at the end of the day, we will know from my mistakes, if I get it wrong, what you need to do to get it right. So, and as I say, I really would love someone to have a go at this and then send me their pictures when they're done, or send me some part built pictures. It'd be lovely to see. So, looking back at our dimensions before, we know that across here we're looking for 44.25, which is what it was before I cut it. And this dimension across here was 43.84 before I cut it. So what we've got now is 43.18, 43.19. So I'm looking for 31.5. So that was 43.19 minus 31. It's actually 31.49 because I've rounded it up. Equals 11.7. So I've got 11.7 millimeters to take from here. So that's 11.7. And you can see I've put an X here. That's because I'm going to work up here, not from down the bottom. Now let's just check with the other one. That dimension there is 43.64. So 43.64 minus 31.9 equals 11.74. So we're 40 microns out in our dimensions. As I say, a hair on your head is 100 microns, so 40 microns is less than half the diameter of the hair on your head. So we'll aim for 11.72. So I've now got to remove 11.7 millimeters, get the pegs out of the way, from this side of the floor. Alright, so I'm going to take my vernier, set it, I keep calling it a vernier, it's not, it's a caliper. What I'll do is I'll set it a bit short, and then we'll sand it to length afterwards. So I can hold that like that on there, and then with my scriber I can scribe a line in there. Okay, so that's my line for my saw to follow again, so I can get the saw into there. Hopefully it'll work out better this time, I won't mess up like I did last time. You can see it's starting to come through, and it's just on the edge of those two ribs, so that's okay. There we go. So now with the blade in there, I can gently come and scratch out where I want to go, and that blade has started to cut to the left slightly, so I'm going to try and favour it to the right. There we go, that's come back now. And I'm going to purposely cut this on an angle like I did before. So cut an angle that way, and we're done. And then the same on this side. Hopefully I can keep the blade straight. Again, cut the angle down there. And then I'm going to scribe a line here. Where I know I'm short, so I can use the sander to get my place, get where I want to be. So by the end of this video, chaps, we should, or guys and gals should I say, chaps and chapesses, we should have a mocked up body for a short wheelbase Land Rover converted from a 110. And I must say, it's probably easier to do this in real life. Where did that piece go? It's the piece of floor that's come out. There we go. So there we go. You can see it's cut on an angle and everything, so that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to get my blocks here, put the sanding stick in between there like that, and then with this I can just sand away until I'm happy that I'm kind of somewhere handy. There we go. So when we put these together now, as we can see, we still need to take some off of there. So let's just get the premium hobby sander in there and see how we look. Just check we're squarish. 8.2, 7.6, so we're not square at all. And I'm sorry if some of you find this a little boring, watching all this, you can always fast forward. I know a lot of people like to see everything. A lot of people do send me emails and comment that basically it's great because so many channels out there go blah blah blah, there you go, it's done. And I try and show a lot more. The whole idea, as I've said it a few times, is I want you guys to have a go. I want people to have a go at doing stuff like this because it's great for your skills, it's great for your confidence, and it really is so satisfying to do when it goes right. Now if this goes wrong, of course it won't be very satisfying at all. But there we go. So that's like that now. So let's just get this onto a block and see how we're looking. Get a couple of clothes pegs. Like so. That one's distorted. Slide those under there like that. There we go. And that's going to go on like that. So we'll measure across here because we can't get to the... So that's 31.5. That's exactly where we need to be. Look at that. That's incredible. That can't happen very often. That wasn't fixed. That's no editing. There's no nothing. 7.5. 7.56. So I just need to take a little bit more off of this side because it's not quite square. And then that will go together like that. Now what we're looking for here is 31.9. And we've actually got 31.75. So if I need to add a little bit of plastic card in there, it's not the end of the world. So what I'm going to do is I want to kind of try and tape these together nice and tightly. Because I want to just check them on the chassis. Or check it on the chassis, should I say. And see how our bulkhead's going to look. Now I've got a feeling I'm going to have to cut this lug off of here. Oops. Yeah, that lug's going to get in the way, so I'm going to have to cut that off. So I'll just go through that with a pair of snips, like so. And then I'm going to sand that flat. And now this will fit on the chassis like so, and live before your very eyes you'll see if I've messed up. So the bulkhead, look at that, the bulkhead's going to fit straight in those holes like that. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Now how are the side panels going to fit? We'll try one side. Let's just try this side. We've got those two holes to pick up on there. See those two pins in the body there, they'll go into those two holes there. It's a bit difficult altogether. And there we go, guys. Woo! That is quite unbelievable how that's fitted. I can't believe, I mean you can see the floor is taped together, you can barely see the seam. I'll show you here. Okay, so the floor is taped together, you can barely see the seam there. We can see how it fits on this sill here. we've got the floor, we've got the bulkhead in. So we have made ourselves a short wheelbase Land Rover. I'll pop the back on just so it looks right, because it looks a little bit short on the back, but when you add this on, you'll see that it comes to shape. Comes to the right shape. There we go. There we go, there, that goes on like that. So there we go, guys. We've made a short wheelbase Land Rover, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we'll call that a day for part 3. I'm going to get this floor glued together and clamped on. Well, actually, I expect you want to see. We'll do is get this tape off of here. Got a bit of a plastic burr on there. So what I'll do, I will get some of the quick setting here and just put it on like that, and then I can put these together. And I just want to line up oh dear, what am I doing? I've left it go down inside. And I want to line up these chassis rails here, so I'm going to use the end of my rule just to make sure they're lined up and straight and everything, and then we can put some of this on like so, and you can see we've got a pretty consistent run on our cross members. And from memory, I'm sure mine has actually got 3. My short wheelbase Defender has actually got 3 cross members under the floor, so that's cool. I believe the underside floor on the Wolf would have been different, but it looks like Hobby Boss have probably made this from a standard 110 when they designed the kit. So you know, they can be forgiven, because you can look on the internet and find out the chassis mods and everything. There's images of them you can see, so they could probably do that, but I doubt they actually had a real Wolf or a real Wimmick or whatever to use for their design process. So there we go. I'm going to clamp that down on there. I'm just going to put some more extra thin in here to make sure it is properly welded down. And there is a little bit of a step in the floor there because you've got some raised pads, so that's actually a good thing, because that's going to that saves me having to worry about sanding that joint smooth. But there is, I don't know if you can see that in the light, but there is actually a there's a raised section there, there's a step there, and then there's a step there on my seam, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. My main concern is getting this, I know this top has to be parallel because I sanded all that flat, if you remember. So I want to get this on here now and get it clamped. And I want to make sure, I wonder if I'm better off with the wooden pegs, if they will reach. Yeah, better off with those wooden pegs, because these plastic pegs, when you put on there, it's going to tend to push it apart. So I'll get this one now. They don't want to reach, I've got to pull them beyond there where they normally go. There we go, that's in there now. And then clamp the back, make sure it's all together, and then just to make sure, just as a double check. Yep. One thing I did notice, which would be an issue with the standard kit, because I've done nothing, I've changed nothing on this back. I noticed when we put the rear panel on that the actual rear cross member, where's the rear panel? The rear cross member on the inside didn't actually touch. You can see that it's not, that should be, that back of that chassis should be flush with the floor, and it's not. So unless there's something else to go on here, perhaps we'll have a look at the instructions. see if maybe I'm wrong. Let's have a look. It doesn't look like it. We fitted the rear panel on there, and then we're just dropping the body onto the chassis. So basically we need to add some blocks on the back of the chassis here so that it actually contacts the rear cross member. In fact, actually what I am going to do, I'm going to add something to here, because that rear cross member is not correct. It should be a lot thicker than that. So what I'll do, I think, is pack that out and make it look more realistic, and I'll do that on both the kits as well. And there's also some brackets, and there's brackets here that the body bolts to, and they're all missing, so may have to make them. In fact, I might even just do this and then make a resin casting of it. So there we go, guys, that's been part 3. So you've had 2 parts today being Saturday. You're spoiled. I'm afraid I've done nothing on the book today, I'm sorry, but I have spent quite a few hours on this, and I've also been making up a frame to go in the making up a ramp, sorry. In the winter months, my Harley lives in the living room, so that it stays warm and dry. If it's out in the garage and starts to see the damp, one of the problems with Harleys is they do tend to, their bolts and fittings and fittings and stuff, they tend to corrode a little bit, so I like to keep it in the dry, stop it you know, down inside the Allen bolt heads and stuff. They start to corrode and look a bit tatty, so I just want to keep it in the living room and have it all shiny and everything. Also gives me more room in the garage to play with the Mustang. So there we go. So that's all together now. I'm really happy with how that's come out. The chassis is looking like it's dead square with the floor. The bulkhead fits in there lovely, as we know. So that's that. And we've seen all the panels fit. I couldn't be happier. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in part 4.